Please welcome Yvette, Dr. Yvette Erasmus. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. How lovely to see you here today. I'm going to take a minute and just get used to being up here instead of down there. I'm more comfortable down there, to be honest with you. But I also find being up here playful and fun. So I am going to try and get into that space. So the theme for this month is living in the digital age. And I gave a lot of thought to what does one say when we're going to start talking about living in the digital age? How does one even begin to take such a huge, huge topic and say anything that might be remotely meaningful? So, of course, my mind, being an ex-English teacher, goes to all kinds of wordplay. I start thinking about energy and how it's in the energy system, and we have an energy system. And then I start thinking about what energizes us and what takes our attention. And then I started playing with, is technology using you, or are you using technology? And then I began thinking about what are we plugging into and out of? So my mind went into a lot of different places, and what I have landed on this morning is that ultimately, at the end of the day, really every single subject that we talk about comes back to connectivity. And it comes back to connections. It comes back to what we are connecting to, whether it's connecting with technology, connecting with ourselves, connecting with other people, connecting with the world at large. So there's a lot of important questions we need to be asking in our own use and our own relationship with technology about our sense of connectivity in the world and how that's changing. And the other thing that for me, everything comes back to, if you've heard me speak before, you know I have a one-track mind. It comes back to relationships. Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with technology, your relationship with other people, and your relationship with life on the planet. So what we're going to focus on today is how those themes are impacted by living in the digital age. How do we understand connection? How do we understand relationship when we have a kind of access and a kind of disconnection from one another that 200 years ago we weren't working with? Is that making sense to people? So before I get going on some of my thoughts about this, I have a couple of stories to tell you today, but before I get going on that, what I'd really like you to do is turn to somebody sitting next to you. I'd actually like to begin with some face-to-face human connection with human beings in this room. And what I'd like you to talk about, just for 5 minutes, I'd like you to think about and just share with one another, what is your relationship with technology? How do you relate to technology? How do you relate to the digital age? How do you feel? How do you feel about devices, the internet, all of the how are you defining technology? I'd just like you to check in with yourselves and most specifically hone in on, are you at peace with your relationship with technology? Why not? So I'd like you to just think a little bit personally, and then in about 5 minutes, we'll come back together. So find someone to chat with. All right, for those of you who can hear me, I'm going to have you just begin looking away from the person who's talking. One of the quickest ways to get somebody to stop talking is to stop looking at them. Have you noticed that? One of the quickest ways to get somebody to stop talking is to stop looking at them. Have you ever tried that? Okay. If somebody is using more words than you enjoy, start looking at something else. And they'll run out of steam. And they'll begin to wonder why you're not paying attention. It's a very subtle and very, very gentle way of redirecting somebody, because for many people who were raised in polite cultures, you don't interrupt. And so then what we end up doing is we end up holding space for so much longer than we enjoy. And I bring this up as a technique because it also has to do with our relationship with technology. Okay? What are you looking at? What has grabbed your attention? Do you feel like you can look away? Do you give yourself awareness and permission to stop looking? What things have you captured? What things do you have choicefulness and power over? We want to start thinking about some of this today. It would help me to hear a little bit, just a few things about what you talked about in your groups, in your pairs. Like, what is your relationship with technology like? What were some of the things you noticed? Yes, John?
Hold on, John.
John, wait for the microphone. Sorry, I didn't tell everybody I was going to do this in a more complicated way today.
Our little group was unanimous. Our relationship with technology is frustration.
Is frustration? What's frustrating?
Yeah. Well, you try to do something and it doesn't work. That's the frustration. And
yes.
You can't really talk to it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Well, you can talk to it all you want, but it's not very responsive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's very stressful sometimes because you always check it and everything if someone messages you. And I think it's actually very peaceful if you don't have it with you. Or because then, especially when people know that you don't take it with you, then you know they won't write you and you won't have to stay on top of it all the time and think of it all the time.
Yep. So it's almost stressful every time a notification comes up. There's a pull of that I need to go somewhere. And then we end up feeling a little bit more like a puppet on a string than an independent human being who has agency. We're constantly being pulled. And so that experience can feel very stressful. Yeah. More. Yes.
Yes, I like the way my partner described our mutual frustration with having to log in and have passwords and this and that, and everywhere you go it's always that way. And my friend called it boundaries. It's like we're losing our boundaries.
We're losing our boundaries.
Yes.
And this question of passwords you could think of as a form of a boundary or a gateway. Yeah. Others, yeah. Here.
Where are we?
And then here.
For me, it's like almost, I'm afraid of addiction, turn into addiction. And I'm always trying not to addict anything. I always keep myself, but it's impossible almost, I always challenge with myself.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I very, very commonly hear people asking these days, am I addicted? How do I know if I'm addicted? And I'll talk a little bit about that if you're interested in it, but yeah.
I love how you're tying it to relationships.
Yep.
So what's in my world right now is I have a friend, a very good friend, who's about 16 years younger than I am. And so how he relates to technology is different than I do. And we often have conversation via texting.
Yes.
But he'll ask me something like, how's your day? And then I'll tell him, and then he'll just disappear. And did you really care how my day was?
Yeah.
And then if I bring that up to him and share how that is for me, he feels like it's an expectation.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's interesting how, different generations.
Yep, we have very different relationships, expectations, norms in terms of how we are using things, and it is changing cultural norms around the rules of engagement, right? I mean, there's a law changing around that. Did you want to say something, Linda? Thank you. Wait.
I think it's very exciting and brilliant, and I love the information that's available. I love doing research. I love finding out new people, new things, what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to build off of this because one of the first things that I'd like us to be collectively aware of is that technology is neither good nor bad. We're not here to try and figure out whether having cell phones or the internet or whatever technological advances are good or bad. The quote-unquote goodness or badness does not lie in the tool. It doesn't lie in the tool. It lies in the user using the tool. So that's the first thing that I'd like our attention to be on. Who's using the technology? And for what? These are much more important questions than whether or not it's good or bad to live in the digital age. We are living in a digital age, and we need to be asking much deeper questions about who we are in relationship to the digital age. Now, one of the things that people brought up in their pairs is the question of digital literacy. And what do we mean by digital literacy? Well, on the one hand, we're talking about, do you simply have the skills and the know-how to understand how digital things work? I find that I like to think of myself as very geeky and very, very nerdy. I love everything to do with gadgets and technology and I still very frequently am asking my 16-year-old how something works. Okay? Because it goes so fast. There's so much to learn. I still have not figured out Snapchat. I still have not figured out Instagram. It doesn't go with my mental models of how relatedness works. But it is her mental model of how relatedness works, and I need to learn about that. Okay? So digital literacy, one of the things we want to start watching for is that with the rise of technology, there is a risk of massive inequality between the haves and the have-nots and the skilled and the unskilled. Okay, so this is a huge risk. When I lived in Bali for a couple of years, and there's not a lot of technology. How many people in here remember internet cafes? Okay, where we weren't wired at home. You went to a little internet cafe and paid by the hour to get connected. Right? So when I lived in Bali, it was still like that. When I came back to the States in 2007, it was a pretty big awakening in terms of how much I had missed and how much I needed to get updated to get up to speed with how things are working here. And all of the advances that had gone on here, all of the things that were available to, I think the study that I read recently is 80% of United States citizens, which still leaves 20% people not connected and not skilled up. Now, not only the technical skills, but more importantly, far, far, far more importantly in my view, we need digital literacy around what it means to be a human being, a loving, connected human being, in how we are connecting with technology. And the nature of technology makes this a little bit challenging. When I write something on, let's just choose one, Facebook, because I'm upset about something, so I vent in my little 140 used to be, I don't know what it is now, pages and pages of status updates. I get to write something down as if it's a journal. I get to hit send. It gets posted, and I get instant relief. What I don't get is feedback from everybody who reads it on how that lands. And the kind of feedback that I used to get when I say something to your face and I can instantly read your facial reactions, I am disconnected from now. Okay? Which means that I don't get on the ground feedback about the impact of what I'm doing. Now, let's not think of this as good or bad, but let's just think of this in practical terms. If I can now say anything, I can make it a public billboard to whoever is listening, and I am no longer connected to the impact that this is having on other people. How do I, number one, feel any sense of connection? and feel any sense of, get any sense of feedback loop that increases my learning, my growth, my relationship. Taken to a logical extreme, I'm just giving a tiny micro moment, but taken to a logical extreme, what is happening in some circles is that people are feeling more and more isolated. And not only are they more and more isolated, they are living in echo chambers. When you think a little bit about how money-making institutions, I'm going to use a very broad umbrella, corporations, businesses, whomever, governments, whatever you want to call, but people who are interested in making money, who see human beings as consumers, who are here to get them a profit, and then they begin coming up with all kinds of algorithms to predict, statistics are super powerful in this, to predict what you're interested in. And then they begin to feed you your own beliefs back at you so that you begin to live in an online bubble thinking that the world is like this. It can get very dangerous very quickly. Okay? And it can get very isolating very quickly. So we want to be aware of these things. Digital literacy is about understanding both the risks and the incredible benefits of technology. The incredible benefits. I see incredible support groups happening. People who used to think that they were alone in the world. There are online communities where people can have meaningful, although typed, although there's so much video conferencing now, communities where they don't feel so alone. Where if my family of origin was problematic or abusive in any way, or I grew up in a culture where I didn't fit the templated majority, and I felt like an outsider and I didn't feel like I belonged, technology is allowing people who don't have local resources to find worldwide resources of people like them. This can be an incredibly beautiful, community-building, expansive use of technology. It can also be an incredibly destructive use. So one of the things we want to think about is that technology does two things to who we are. It amplifies it, and it speeds it up. Okay? We can amplify anything. I mean, I'm very much enjoying that I get to amplify what I think needs to be more of in the world using technology. I can post videos on YouTube. I post things on Facebook. I write email newsletters. My newsletter goes all around the world. What I have to say is amplified, and it's fast. I don't have to send it on a ship that's going to take 6 months to get there anymore. There's an instantness that carries tremendous creative possibility and potential, and it can also do tremendous harm. Okay. Problems with technology, to the degree that technology increases dehumanization. Very problematic. If you are no longer in touch with the human being and you're interacting in a way that you think that other people don't have feelings and that other people don't matter, and that it becomes a tool simply for the spread of ideology, disconnected ideology from on-the-ground human beings, I think this gets very dangerous. There's tremendous danger when we're no longer connected to human impact and when we no longer care about human impact. The spread of violence, to the degree that we can press a button and just take out that part of the world, and we're not connected to death and destruction and human impact and devastation. We begin treating our world as if it's a video game. Incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous use of technology. To the degree that we become so desensitized to the suffering of human beings, and we simply see them through their labels and through the screen, and we're not connected at the heart level with one another, it can become incredibly dangerous. But we can use technology for life-affirming, connected, healing purposes as well. And the choice becomes a personal one in terms of what you are doing with it in your own life and why. And this becomes a more powerful question for us to begin asking. How are you spending your attention? And somebody brought up earlier on, every time that my iPhone goes off, or whatever phone you have, and there's a ding, and I go to it, it's as if we've become, controlled by the ding instead of grounded in a sense of who we really are. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. They all involve my daughter. Last year, I began getting very concerned about her technology use. She was 15, she's 16 now. And at the same time, I think some of you may relate to this, it also felt like, what's that expression, the cat is out of the bag, like I can't get it back in. In some ways it was like it would have been so much easier if she never received any of these things to begin with, but to now take it away after she's used to using it is a completely different thing. It feels like a punishment. It feels like removing her entire social network from her, and it's important to understand that piece. At the same time, she was on her phone so often, it became like her lifeline to the world. But the problem, at 1 a.m, she's talking to the friend who is suicidal. Okay, what do I want to do with that? Let's think about that for a moment. So, yay, her friend has access to a friend when she's in crisis and is finding support in the middle of the night in a way that doesn't ring the house phone and all the parents wake up, right? Good or bad? Good or bad? On the other hand, here's my kiddo asleep at night, and she's woken up like that in the middle of the night on a school night with a crisis, and she's alone in dealing with it because mom's not awake and she doesn't get any guidance in what we do in a situation like this, and she's carrying the burden of it on her shoulders and feeling like she needs to do something. And then how many kids in the morning when you wake up and they're getting ready for school say, oh, by the way, Mom, at 1 a.m, so-and-so called me and I need a little advice? No. They go to sleep, they're exhausted, they go off to school. I didn't know about this until almost a week later. Okay, so in some ways the accessibility can be amazing, but we want to be thoughtful around how we're teaching ourselves and our children to use it in a way that benefits human beings. So anyway, in a moment of desperation, I convinced her, because I really wanted her to have an experience of her life without technology. And there was no way to convince her of this directly. I remember growing up without technology. We didn't even have television come on until 4 p.m, and then it went off at 8 at night after the evening news. Like, we got 4 hours of TV a day. We didn't even have more than that. And I was thinking, she doesn't have this experience. She doesn't know what that's like. She doesn't know herself without this appendage. And I wanted to have that. And of course, this is a hard sell. This is not something that she's going to agree to. Except that I did find an outward bound trip that involved whitewater river rafting. And that did the trick. So when I said, do you want to go whitewater river rafting? That was much better sell than, do you want to go and live in the wilderness for 10 days without your phone? Right? So yes to whitewater river rafting. Off she goes. And the whole time while she was there, I was like crossing my fingers because I had so much invested in this. I thought, please, please, please let this be a good experience for her. Because if she goes and she hates it, I'm at a loss at the next step. Because she might absolutely hate this, I don't know. When my kid came back from that experience, now for those of you who don't know anything about Outward Bound, it's 2 adults, it's 10 kids. They pack a backpack, and for 10 days they go off the grid. And they're hiking, and they're living off the land, and they're doing leadership and character building work with one another. And not only that, my extremely extroverted child, she is like on the bell curve, up here in the 1.5% in terms of extroversion. They do a 24-hour solo day where you are literally by yourself speaking to nobody for 24 hours, then you debrief that. I didn't tell her too much about that ahead of time. So she knew about it theoretically, but I could see she hadn't connected what that would mean, so I decided not to enlighten her proactively. So she goes on this trip, she gets back home, and the first thing she says to me is, "Mom, no offense, but that was the best 10 days of my life." And she came back. She was reluctant. She had mixed feelings about going. But she came back alive and vibrant and confident. She told me she didn't miss her phone once. She made connections with 9 other people, all from different parts in the States. It was absolutely transformative. And let me just tell you how transformative. She came back in the middle of August. Ever since then, which is now maybe a month in, she is cleaning up her room. She's unpacking the dishwasher. She woke me up the other day with a cup of tea. These are new behaviors that I am very much appreciating. Not only that, one of the things that they did on Outward Bound, this is not a plug for Outward Bound, but any of these wilderness inquiry places would do it. One of the things they did every evening was appreciations and ownerships. And so she came home and she said, "I want us to start doing appreciations and ownerships. So every night before bedtime, we check in." And it goes a little like this. "Jessie, one of the things I appreciate about you today was that you woke me up with tea this morning." She goes, "Mom, one of the things I appreciate about you is how you didn't get mad when I was 2 minutes late for curfew the other night." "Jessie, one of the things I'm going to take ownership for is that earlier on this morning when you were running late, I got really harsh and a little abrupt. And it was probably more than was needed in that moment, and I'm going to look at that and figure out what was going on with me. Mom, one of the things I'm going to take ownership for is I was not ready this morning." It has changed the nature of the conversation in the house. When she came back, she stayed in touch with everybody in her group through Snapchat. They made a group. They have a social community. Yay for technology. They are reinforcing behaviors in one another. Excellent. She, on her own, decided that she wanted to put her phone in the kitchen instead of her bedroom. That lasted for 3 days. It's back in her bedroom. I'm not fighting that battle right now. Okay. So here's the question. How are we using these things, and do we have balance in our lives about what really matters to the degree that we're using these tools to enhance relationship, to increase our sensitivity to impact on other people, to increase a sense of connectivity and well-being in the world? Go for it. But if you are beginning to use it in a way that you feel like a puppet on a string, and it is increasing your anxiety, and it is increasing your stress, and it is increasing your sense of isolation, then more technology use is unlikely going to fix the thing you're actually wanting. Because nothing replaces face-to-face human interaction and deep, meaningful connection with an embodied human being. Nothing replaces that. You cannot use technology to babysit your kids without there being an incredibly detrimental impact. And can you use it for short-term distraction when you need it? Yes. Is this making sense? Okay, I have a few things that I want to check because I wanted to say more things. Oh, here's another danger. When we're using technology, we are comparing our insides to other people's outsides. Watch out. Because every time that you compare what's going on inside of you to what it looks like is going on in other people's lives, their curated version of their happy life, which, let me tell you, is probably not that happy because I see these people in my office a lot. It looks really good on the outside, but it can feed a lot of discontent and a lot of low self-esteem and a lot of anxiety when it looks like everybody else is doing so well, and what's wrong with me? Okay, so don't get trapped in that illusion. Don't get trapped in that illusion. Fear of missing out. Another big thing. How many times is my daughter unhappy because she sees everybody else having fun, but she's home alone on her social media watching everybody else having fun? The moment you start doing that, turn that thing off and go and create an experience. And another thing, that this is a personal pet peeve, don't go and create an experience and spend the entire experiencing documenting the experience. Have you had this? Like, I'm not even in the experience because I'm so busy documenting it to provide an outside for everybody else's insides. And in doing so, I'm really just torturing other people. So start posting some things about how shitty your life is, okay? Help other people feel better by just showing them like what it really is like. Use technology to get real and to get vulnerable and to start inviting a more on-the-ground conversation. I belong to a neighborhood Facebook group, right? Everybody in my community is on this Facebook group, and I'm reading through, because this is a very meaningful activity, but I'm reading through everybody criticizing and, complaining about this, that, and the next thing in the neighborhood, and did you know such and such, and here's what's wrong with the world, and I would find myself getting off feeling like, life is just so bad. And then I thought, but my neighbor across the street helped me paint my fence. Another neighbor was doing, anyway, so all these, and I was like, but in real life, this is not my experience. What I'm reading out there is not my experience. So I made a commitment to myself, and I've been following it, to get on that same Facebook page on a weekly basis and express an appreciation to somebody in my community publicly. And it has generated more and more stories, usually in the comments, about, I want to shout out to so-and-so for such and such. It's a small shift, but we can make these shifts. What conversations are you starting? What conversations are you offering? Become a different kind of conversation starter in all of these places. And we can't get past this subject without talking about what's true. Where's truth? In the digital world, in the mental world, we can turn truth into lies, lies into truth. We can spin anything. We can take any image and make it look like something different than what it was. We've been doing this to women's bodies for a long time. We're now doing it everywhere. Okay? We say one thing is happening, but we report something different. What's true? In the technological world, we don't have access to truth. Do you know how you know what's true? Does anyone know? How do you know what's true? You feel it. You feel it. And you can only feel it in an on-the-ground, embodied relationship with another being where your BS detector will work. Everything else, everything in the mind, you can't feel. Okay, this is why gaslighting works so well in psychological abuse. Because if we stay only at the mind level and the thinking level, we get disoriented. We don't know what's true at that level. You know how you know what is true? When somebody is standing in front of you and they are telling you something, and in your gut you can feel it. That's how we know what's true. If everything we consume is relying on disembodied data in the mental realm only, we're in trouble. Because we can be convinced of anything, and we have no way of knowing what's different. This is dangerous. So get your attention back on where you have access to truth and relationship and connectivity and impact. Get your energy back. So the question of what are you plugging into? Where are you spending your attention? What are you if you think about it like this, where you put your attention, you all know this, where you put your attention, whatever you give attention to grows. So when you are on a web page, do you know that when you're on a web page, the owner of that web page can tell how long you're on that web page, where your cursor goes, when you are about to click away, And they've got all kinds of code that if you scroll down and you're about to click, they'll put a pop-up window. I mean, their ability to track and predict exactly what you are doing online is exceptional. And where we spend our attention is used by money-making corporations to decide what they're going to give us more of. So become choiceful around what data you'd like to give them. Where would you like people, whoever has money, if you think of it like this, the powers that be are really just going to follow the trail of where people are going to spend money. So where are you spending money? You can vote for the kind of world that you want by where you are placing your attention, what kinds of things you're giving attention to, and where you are spending your money. That is the power of every single one of us. And it's incredibly important when it comes to the digital world for us to be thinking more consciously about these things. Okay, hold on, I've got more for you. But I want to make sure I'm covering the main things that I find exciting. Okay. So what I want to leave you with then are some practical things for you to do or not do. All right? The first thing is control your context. What do I mean by control your context? Peer pressure, use peer pressure to your advantage. When you go out with your friends, make a pact. When we get together, let's make an agreement that we keep our phones in the other room. There's nothing worse than trying to have a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody who goes, oh, just a minute, hold that thought. Oh, it's nothing. It disrupts the flow. Make a pact. Make a pact that we don't have technology at meal times so that we can connect with one another. Decide for yourself. Become a proactive consumer of how technology is going to be used in your life. I have tried this many times. I'm still working on it. I am terrible at it, but it's such a great idea. So I'm going to give you the idea, but I will tell you I can't do it yet. I will practice. Schedule in your calendar, if you're this kind of person, the hour every day that you will check email. And do not check email the rest of the day or your voicemail. Turn the notifications off your phone. Turn the notifications off your desktop. There are all kinds of apps that allow you to go dark for a while. And somebody brought up addiction, if that thought fills you with tremendous anxiety, pay attention to the anxiety and ask yourself what that's about for you. Okay? So that's one thing. Changing your environment, turning off notifications. Oh, that's the other thing. Stop being an on-demand person. This is one of the other dark sides of technology, that we feel like we need to be available on demand. If somebody texts me, I need to text back immediately. If they email me, I need to immediate. We've become this immediate instant gratification culture if we leave it unchecked. And one of the things that we know increases human well-being is the ability to delay gratification. The ability to not live reactively to the outside world. The ability to actually be able to step back, reclaim your choicefulness, reclaim your attention, reclaim your intention, and act on the world. That's what it means to be an empowered human being. You use the tools for what you want to be here for, not the other way around. So find ways of getting that back into your life. Mindfulness and meditation obviously will help you with attention control. And this is not an audience where I have to talk at all about the benefits of mindfulness and meditation, but one practical thing, every time you want to touch your phone, put your hand on your heart, breathe 5 times, count to 5, and then decide if you want to reach for that phone. You can still reach for the phone every single time, but I would like it if you were reaching for the phone intentionally and in service of something that matters, not habitually because it's become a habit that I don't know what else to do with myself right now. Okay? Use these pieces of technology to enhance your sense of self-connection. Commit to spreading the good. We can spread a lot of good. We can amplify the good. We can spread the good fast. So who you are, put that out there. Think about how you're doing that. All right. And so this, just to close, I want to remind you that your life is the sum of everything that you pay attention to. And for us collectively and globally on the planet, where things are going is the sum total of what we human beings are feeding and paying attention to. So take responsibility for yourself, and then take responsibility for your circles of influence, because what I would encourage us to really put our focus on creating are loving, thriving human ecosystems that are relationship-based and that are deeply connected in meaningful, deep, and rich ways, in which we're not dehumanizing each other, we're not desensitized to each other, we're not disconnected from each other. And we're using these incredible tools that we have access to amplify love and connected relationships on the planet. Thank you. All right, let's take a minute and bring our attention to our hands. And just really feel into human connectedness. What does it feel like to touch another human being? Feel the warmth of the hands. Feel the aliveness. You don't get this from a keypad. And I'm going to end with just a little poem by Anne Hillman. First, you need only look. Notice and honor the radiance of everything about you. Play in this universe. Tend all these shining things around you. The smallest plant, the creatures and the various objects in your care. Be gentle. Nurture. Listen. As we experience and accept all that we really are, we grow in care. So may you leave today re-examining your relationship with every device, with an intention to use everything to amplify care and love and connectedness as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.